All right, so as you guys know, it is unfortunate that Andrew Cuomo, the douche, who is a exceptionally corrupt politician, the Winklevoss twins had donated money to their campaign, and suddenly, after he gets elected, boom, their cryptocurrency has now been approved. We clearly see the correlation going on there, but we know he's a textbook corrupt politician, and that he is also not a true progressive. Now, Cynthia Nixon lost not because she was a bad candidate, but because the voters are just stupid. Even people like Nicki Minaj, who are supposed to be like the people for the people, it turns out Cardi B is actually the one for the people. So I support Cardi B in that fight now. But she had lost, Andrew Cuomo had won, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had shortly after endorsed Andrew Cuomo, which I think was a bad idea because, first of all, it was too soon, but number two, it just wasn't necessary because Andrew Cuomo was essentially just saying fuck you to the progressive movement and to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And so when someone does that, you don't return the favor by, kissing their ass. That's some Obama type of shit, right? Where, you want to hold hands and they piss on you and you want to hold hands. But there's also this sort of stupid idea that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is just some kind of god figure who's not going to make any mistakes, which is very stupid because she doesn't have any political experience prior to now. And the idea that, she's a sellout or that she's a centrist or that she's not a real progressive who believes in real progressive ideals, I think is just a dumb idea altogether. Now, Jimmy Dore, in the process of speaking about all this, had said that basically there is no takeover of the Democratic Party by progressives, to which I heavily, heavily disagreed because there has been so much traction and so much progress made with all the candidates that not only the Justice Democrats have elected, but other progressive organizations have elected themselves. And it looks like Kyle Kulinski sort of went into depth about this. First, I'm going to show you guys Jimmy Dore's statement on, his thoughts on the progressive takeover of the Democratic Party, and then I will show you guys what Kyle Kulinski said.
There is no progressive takeover of the Democratic Party. Do you need any? What the F? And when Bernie said he was calling for a revolution, he wasn't being truthful. That was just a gimmick. He's not being truthful. He won't come on this show and talk about it. Bernie won't even come on the show. He'll do any interview with anybody if you said you voted for Hillary. But if you didn't, Bernie won't come near you. That's the opposite of political courage.
Canova. Also, I'd love to see you debate Dore on third parties versus, we've already discussed that, versus takeover of Dems, because I feel Jimmy makes points you haven't addressed before. What points are those? Because him and I have had these conversations before. And you're not even characterizing my position correctly, because you're saying I support a takeover of the Dems. That's not it. I support a takeover of the Dems plus any way a left-winger gets elected. So I feel like my position is iron fucking clad because I'm saying let's go all of the above. And anybody who says let's not go all of the above, by definition, has a weaker strategy because you're not doing all of the potential strategies. So you're not characterizing my position accurately, number one. And number two, him and I have already spoken about that. And I don't think he even disagrees with me. He might think he disagrees with me more than he does, but he doesn't really disagree with me unless his position is don't even bother to try to take over the Democratic Party, in which case I definitely disagree with him because you need to do that along with get progressives elected any and all ways possible. So, and I have no idea what point you're talking about that you say he made that I haven't addressed, because I'm pretty sure I've addressed every single potential angle of that debate and that discussion. And remember, at a certain point, the rubber meets the road. So it's one thing to talk about all this stuff. It's another thing to actually get W's and get it done. And there's one point I've heard people make where they say, oh, how many wins have there been? Well, first of all, 26, which is pretty significant. That's pretty significant that you have 26 progressives who are now advancing, who are Justice Democrats, not to mention the Our Revolution, not to mention the PCCC candidates. But people go, oh, there's only one corporate Democrat you effectively knocked off thus far, and that's Joe Crowley. How many third-party candidates have been elected so far? Exactly. So, and again, that's not me shitting on third party movement. That's not me shitting on independent. That's not me shitting on Green Party people. I'll support any of them if they're for the right policies. But let's not act like that's not harder, because it is harder. We've had this conversation before. You don't even have ballot access. You have to get ballot access to get the third party people in. And by the way, if you were going to go third party and try to go that way, you should at the very least go green above all else, because green already has ballot access in at least 48 of the states. A new third party has no ballot access anywhere. If you think it's rigged against Democrats taking over the Democratic Party, I got news for you. It's even more rigged against third parties. And the funny thing is, most people who support the third party direction admit that in conversation because they know it's true. Everybody knows that it's rigged against third parties. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. So if we're admitting it's rigged against third parties and we're admitting it's harder to win the third party route, well, then it's a weird thing to say, let's only go in that direction. At the very least, you should say, let's try both strategies and all strategies of taking over the Democratic Party, winning as independents, winning as Green Party people, and winning as prospective new parties that, you know, are yet to be created or have just been created or are on the verge of being created, like the People's Party or whatever. Point is, guys, I don't think this is a fake debate. Do you support left-wingers or not? You do. I do. End of conversation. Support them wherever they are. Period. Period. That's it. That's it. There is no and then. That's it. If they're an independent progressive, I support them. Green Party progressive, I support them. Democratic progressive, I support them. That's it. To get focused on the labels and focused on the party affiliation is a non-debate. So that's the reality of the situation.
So as you can see there, Jimmy Dore has clearly claimed that the Democratic Party takeover by progressives is fake and it's not real and it's not something that's really happening. It's sort of a fake thing. And it's very clear that Kyle Kulinski does not agree with this, just as, you know, I stated in my first video, before even Kyle talked about it. I disagreed with Jimmy on that as well, because we have clearly seen so many gains made by the Justice Democrats and Our Revolution and different organizations that have successfully been able to get progressive candidates. And as I always point to, when I first began talking about the Justice Democrats, which was when it was founded, I honestly didn't even know if they were actually going to get a single candidate. Now, they already have 3 sitting representatives in the House who are Justice Democrats, and on top of that, they have had a bunch of candidates actually get nominated and elected. So, and they're nominees now, and a bunch of them are running unopposed, or they're in very blue districts, meaning that they're going to win. They don't really have much of an opposition to actually overtake them. So it's very clear that Kyle Kulinski does not agree with the statement by Jimmy Dore that essentially we need to go fully third party. And Kyle Kulinski makes a pretty good point, explaining that essentially if you think that it's rigged against progressives in the Democratic Party, then it is far, far worse as a third party. And apparently this was something that went down in the thought process when it actually came to the founding of Justice Democrats itself, because I guess they had pondered on the idea of having a third party instead of having the Justice Democrats organization attempt to take over from within the Democratic Party. And they, upon analysis, they essentially came to the conclusion that it would not be a good decision to start a third party for the reason that they will face so many struggles and barriers and different things and different, things, and it would end up in hindering the movement in the first place because they don't have ballot access, especially if you're starting your own third party. But even in the Green Party, they still have trouble with those kinds of things because the truth is that the system is rigged against third parties. We have a duopoly in the nation, and it would be, very difficult to do that. But the thing is that Kyle isn't opposed. Kyle Kulinski isn't actually against third parties or the third party route. He just believes in an all of the above approach, which is something that I definitely agree with, because essentially no matter where the person who supports and backs progressive policies is, you should vote for that candidate because that candidate is best suited towards, what you actually believe in. And so I just think that it's really, really a stupid idea that we shouldn't continue the attempt to take over the Democratic Party because we have already seen success. And it hasn't even been 2 years since the midterm elections. And what you're essentially looking at is a situation in where we can really build momentum in making the Progressive Caucus and the Democratic Party and actually having this sort of power structure within the Democratic Party. And as elections go on, we continue to push forward. We continue to push and push and push and push. And so, Just Democrats already has, I think, 26 candidates who have been elected to be nominees. Then you continue to move forward as elections go by. This is just the beginnings. This is just the original sort of first throes of the movement in and of itself. And so when you see this much success and you say, it's BS, it's not legit, we need to go third party, when going third party is fine, but essentially just dipping out and abandoning the idea of the Justice Democrats and overtaking the Democratic Party by, having more progressives within it, actual real progressives. I think that that's just naive, and I just don't think it's smart. I don't think it's a good tactic at all for the real left, and I think that it's honestly a pretty darn detrimental idea, and I think that secular Kyle Kulinski has made that pretty clear that is his opinion. But let me know your thoughts on this down below.